A year had passed since high school graduation. Most of my friends were already getting accepted into teaching programs, or taking their MCAT for medical school, or getting real jobs. Me? I was going through my everyday coursework, just trying to keep my head above water. I was going to be a doctor and help people. I wasn't sure how, but that was the plan. All through my childhood, my parents did their best to bring my sister and me up with a sense of culture, how to identify ourselves, whether it was eating tamales durante las fechas navideñas or carving a turkey on Thanksgiving. It was not my parents' fault, but it tended to lean more towards American traditions. My family has lived on this side of the Rio Grande for many generations, so over time, some of our Mexican traditions had been lost. I didn't realize it until I got older. While I was in elementary school, I attended the required classes, PE and music. But my school was different. Every other week we would go to culture class. There we would learn about cultures from around the world. It was very basic information, but it triggered something inside me, the want to know more about my culture, as well as other groups. In this culture class, we learned about different cultures, like Mexicanos, who celebrate El Día de los Reyes, Africans, who celebrate Kwanzaa, or the Jewish, who celebrate Hanukkah instead of Christmas. However, that was elementary, when I was young without a care in the world. My teenage years were much of the complete opposite. I wanted to separate myself from my Mexican heritage because I wanted to fit in at school. At the higher grade levels, there was rarely any cultural promotion. There was no culture club I could join, and the Spanish club would not have been very welcoming to a girl who could barely understand the language. With pressure from all sides, I wanted to simply breeze through my required Spanish classes and be done with it. I just put the cultural traditions aside and tried to move along with my life. My parents would remind me that speaking both Spanish and English would get me a better job and more money, but I would just blow them off. I think subconsciously, I hoped to find a job where I wouldn't have to speak Spanish at all. I then went into college wanting to be a doctor. Why? There was social pressure that said, "You're Latina. It'll be great to have more people like you in high positions. But don't promote your heritage. We just like you for your last name." So that's what I did my freshman year. I studied to be a doctor because society told me to. Even though I was studying hard in all my science courses, I wasn't happy. My classes weren't fun, and I wasn't even sure what I was learning. I felt like just a number in a sea of biology students. However, in my intro to cultural anthropology class, I felt a connection. The class discussed a wide variety of cultures and their traditional practices. I felt like I was back in my elementary culture class learning about the world. When we covered Mexican traditions, I could immediately relate. It was the culture I was keeping bottled up inside me that wanted to return. But even at the time, I wasn't sure if I could take the leap of faith and dedicate my life to it. My wake-up call came from my college mentor, a white man who was far more cultured than I was back then. He spoke much more fluent Spanish than me, and that made me feel inferior. This was my beautiful culture, and I was being shown up by someone who wasn't even born along the border. His unintentional inspiration showed me that I needed to follow my heart, no matter which direction it took me. That meant me embracing my Spanglish, even if it sounded funny, accepting my heritage, and studying what really made me happy. By embracing who I truly was gave me a sense of cultural release. The awakening inside me allowed me to learn about my culture as well as other groups. My anthropology classes were inviting. I had finally found my home in college, with people who felt just like I did about culture, whether it was at school or at work. The experiences since then have all been rewarding, and sometimes even one of a kind. Regardless of what anyone says, I'm just a budding anthropologist, living life one cultural experience at a time.